Now, don't get me wrong, I love Chicago's classic holiday traditions, but every year I'm looking for something a little different. You know, a place I can go not only to find some good gifts for my people, but also have a good time. And that's why I want to put y'all on the Sauce Holiday Night Market. They got food, cocktails, a DJ, and some of the coolest artists and craftspeople across the Midwest. Unique gifts like handmade joint holders, jewelry made out of different kind of animal bones, stained glass in the shape of butts, and sure, if you're into it, Malort flavor hot sauce. It's at the Chicago Athletic Association on December 12th and 13th, Friday and Saturday from 5 to 10 p.m. It's free to attend, but if you RSVP, you could win $50 to spend. Learn more at RSVP at saucedmarket.com. Y'all already know I love Chicago. Even when it's cold outside, when my train late, even when the news is frustrating as hell, I always feel connected to this city. And it's that exact feeling of connection that drove us to create the CityCast Chicago Neighbors program. Yes, it's a way to support the show and the newsletter, but it's also a way to get more out of Chicago, more out of us. When you're a neighbor, you'll get an early look at events coming up around the city. You can shout out local businesses and organizations you love, use our platform to put them on, and you can get the chance to join us for members-only experiences. When you become a CityCast Chicago neighbor today at membership.citycast.fm, you're going to get our brand new first-of-its-kind CityCast Chicago beanie. Again, that's membership.citycast.fm. Today on CityCast Chicago, former President Barack Obama recently announced that his long-awaited Jackson Park Presidential Center would officially open to the public in June of 2026. A full 11 years after the project was originally announced on the South Side. So plainly stated, why has it taken over a decade? It's Monday, December 8th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Before we get into it, I want to let y'all know today is the first day of our year-end membership campaign, and I want to give a shout out to every single person who has signed up to become a CityCast Chicago neighbor in 2025. It is the most we have ever had since we started this program and this podcast. And here's the deal. We are declaring 2026 the year of local. And we challenging even more readers and listeners to build deeper local connections. I have read y'all messages, right? You want to know where to meet new people or just fellow listeners, how to get outside and involve more, even more ways to learn about this city. And we here to do our part and help you accomplish that with CityCast Chicago Neighbors, which you can find at membership.citycast.fm, right? Obviously, our entire thing here, our entire foundation, everything we do at CityCast Chicago is about local. Whether it's funny, heartbreaking, frustrating, weird, national or international, everything we talk about starts and is rooted here. When you become a neighbor, you help not only sustain those conversations, but you also help Chicagoans connect with each other. We also got perks for neighbors, like invites to members only events where you get to experience the city with us. Plus, for $10 a month, you also get ad-free listening and exclusive events preview in your inbox every single week. And if you join today or this week, you're going to get the brand new, never before seen, first of its kind CityCast Chicago beanie. Mine is on its way to me right now. I'll drop the pictures as soon as I get here. All right. So join now at membership.citycast.fm. All right. Let's jump into this very local story. We've got Sun-Times architecture critic, author, and one of my favorite photographers, Lee Bay, in the building with us. Welcome back to the podcast, Lee.
Thank you, my friend. Good to be back.
All right, so come on. After 10 years, upwards of $800 million in construction costs, a ton of fanfare and criticism along the way, the Obama Presidential Center seems to be rounding the corner. Lee, you recently toured the campus. What were your initial thoughts walking those available grounds?
I saw it last month, and one of the things that I got was the landscape that'll come with the library might be its best feature. Michael Van Valkenburg from New York designed it. It's a dynamic, hilly landscape. Oftentimes what happens is for buildings like this, presidential centers, monumental towers, that kind of thing, the lawn becomes in service to the tower. So you get this kind of broad lawn that leads to the tower. And that's kind of it. This is really, really an active place. Getting close to the tower, though, And inside the tower, the museum tower, I should say, you could get a better sense of why it looks the way it looks. Now, I've been holding off on actually critiquing the whole thing until it's done. But it's a big, but the tower is huge.
Describe it for me. How does it look? I've driven past it a few times at this point across its construction over the last few years. I got to drive past every time I go to my mom's, and so it's kind of hit my eye. Like, do I love it? Do I like it? So kind of describe its facade for us.
Well, it's 220 feet tall, 235 feet tall. So it's as tall as maybe like the Monadnock building downtown at Dearborn and Jackson, and it's clad in granite from New Hampshire that kind of has this swirly gray and white swirly patterns. I think if the rain falls on it, it kind of reads pink, kind of pinkish. Um, it's not the typical glass tower that we see in Chicago that's shaped like a box, like Daily Center, or maybe like almost like an obelisk, like the John Hancock building. This one is it has very few windows, and it's hard to describe. I mean, it looks like a lantern, in some cases. I mean, but it's a very solid, very tall building.
What would be the style of architecture? Is this brutalism? Is this
that's a good question. I have no idea. I mean, brutalism usually means there's the use of concrete. I mean, it comes from a French term that talks about the use of concrete. If this were a concrete building, it would be brutalism, but brutalist. But this one's clad in, it's hard to describe. But it were if it well, I guess brutalism is the closest to it. I would say. It's a very blunt looking building. On the north side of the building, there's a giant stained glass that will illuminate the escalators on the inside. What's interesting, though, for me, was that it's only 4 stories inside the building. I mean, the building is like 20 stories tall, almost 18 stories tall, but in true stories inside the building, exhibition space, office space inside the building, there are only 4 levels.
And that really allows for high ceilings, high exhibits. I've seen videos of, 3 to 4 story digital wall that'll, show pictures and speeches and different elements.
Exactly. And the top floor is a sky room named after Nelson Mandela, and there you see, where there are windows that allow you to look out on the south and look to the south and look to the west, and I think to the north a bit too.
There are a few different spots named after luminaries, like the John Lewis Plaza. There are spots named after folks like Hadia Pendleton, who was a young woman who was a victim of gun violence back in, I believe, the 2010s.
What was interesting about the landscape is the landscape also covers up a forum building. This is where events would be held, a theater as well, as I recall, and also a branch of the Chicago Public Library that'll be underneath this rolling topography, and also parking as well. One of the things that's also interesting is that there's kind of like it's hard to see everything with the construction fences up also. But I think once those fences come down, you'll get a sense that you'll be able to walk from the sidewalk, across Stony Island, from the sidewalk right into the campus. There won't be fences or anything. So in that way, the attempt was made by Todd Williams and Billy Chen, the architect, and the president, who had a big hand in this, to make the tower and make the campus feel like part of the park that it's in.
Can you talk about how the construction has already shifted Jackson Park? Because you talk a lot about the landscape maybe being its best feature. And I mean, dating back to, the time when Jackson Park was selected, there was a lot of concern about how it would shift access to public space, given its main features is this granite tower and home court, but you also talk about them utilizing the underground space. So can you talk about how it's kind of refit this almost 20 acres of Jackson Park?
The biggest thing that I think people notice already, because it happened already, is the demolition of Cornell Drive that used to run around the backside of this land between the Museum of Science and Industry and this parcel that we're talking about. That's gone, and what has been it's been rerouted, I should say, and what has been replaced by will be a kind of a promenade that'll run right along what's the lagoon that normally didn't have access to from the east side, from the west side, the Jackson Park Lagoon. So now you'll be able to walk right up to it. That's huge, and you'll be able to get from the Museum of Science and Industry to the Obama Presidential Center without crossing a street, which is also huge. On the north side of and this is a tricky thing because this is a park that was designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, historic city park on the National Register for Historic Places, nationally known. And although the park is, I don't know, 300, 400 acres, this is only 20. It's still a significant portion of the park. One thing that was lost that they're looking to put back, or they're putting back, is on the north side of the tower where Midway Plaisance meets the park, the east-west street that runs down 60th Street. There was a women's garden that was there, built in the 1930s. 30s. That's being put back. Well, I shouldn't say it's been put back. They're putting a new garden there that will take design references from the old garden, but it'll also be used underneath for stormwater management. So although it'll be a green space that we see with our naked eye, underneath it, it's doing some environmental things to keep water from the site, the whole presidential site, from rainwater from running straight into the sewer. It'll get held on the site and then released slowly.
It's been such a long process. Where is people's anticipation? Are people energized largely for the presidential center to finally open to the public?
I think so. I think that I would yeah. I mean, I think there's a faction of people who don't care about what it looks like, and they're really concerned about the programming. What's going to be in it? What are you going to be able to do? And there's that. There's some people who think it's a monument to to Obama, and nothing more. And that I've talked to, and they're not that keen on going over there. Although they do seem to like the idea of the parkland, which will remain public. And then there's another faction who thinks they will drive up property values and taxes and everything in the surrounding Woodlawn neighborhood and end up pricing people out.
And South Shore as well.
And South Shore as well. And so there's that concern as well.
I'm already knowing that little snowstorm around Thanksgiving in Chicago got some of y'all dreaming of a white Christmas, and luckily, Paramount Theater in Aurora got you covered with their production of the beloved holiday musical. Them dance numbers, epic. The costumes I'm hearing are spectacular. And I know ever since I said Snowy White Christmas at the top, you've been singing the song in your head. It's all good, you can admit it. That's because this show is a family favorite that brings generations together year after year, where pageantry and spectacle come to life on the stage, running now through January 11th in downtown Aurora. Don't miss this iconic holiday production. Get your tickets today at ParamountAurora.com. December is in full swing at the Driehaus Museum. The River North Museum is decked out this holiday season with dazzling exhibits to keep you warm, including The Land of Oz Beyond the Page, featuring objects from or inspired by the 1939 film, including a replica of the Ruby Slippers, original costumes, scripts, production memos, and artworks that made the beloved books come to life. Maybe a field trip for the Wicked lovers in your life. And to really light things up, Tiffany Lamps Beyond the Shade examines the materials Tiffany Studios used to create their astounding output of lighting designs in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Plus, Santa pulling up at the museum on Saturday, December 13th with the elves and professional photographer in tow. Or you could just chill out at a free silent book club on Wednesday, December 17th. Learn more about everything going down this December at DreeHouseMuseum.org. Me and my siblings got my mom an Aura frame a couple years back, and I think it's one of the best gifts we have given her in recent years. It's a digital picture frame that sits right in her foyer when you walk in the front door. We're able to load it up with pictures of us, vacation pics, childhood pictures, and we still keep adding to it. My sister's wedding photos are going on there real soon. Is one way we can keep marking the special occasions and let moms know we're thinking of her. As you're hunting for gifts this season, an Aura frame is a thoughtful, personal gift that keeps on giving even after the holidays are over. Trust me, I love seeing it every time I go to visit. Save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code CityCast at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code CityCast. Terms and conditions apply. Let's back up a little bit. When the center was first announced in 2015, kind of what was the overall energy and reaction from Chicago during that time? Like 2015, Obama is, it's May at the time. He's about to leave office after 2 terms. I don't know if while his legacy was definitely starting to be sort of challenged and, right. I think at that point, the energy was in some respects still high. What was the announcement like during that time?
I think there was a sense from many people, many Chicagoans, that we're glad Chicago got it, because we tend to forget that Hawaii wanted it, Columbia University, Morningside wanted it, and New York. There was relief that, okay, Chicago is getting it. Then it began to be the discussion on, okay, where does it go in Chicago? The West Siders, coalition of West Siders wanted it there. South Siders, of course, because Michelle Obama grew up here and the president taught at the University of Chicago, wanted it here on the South Side, and where on the South Side then becomes the idea, right? So there was a sense that maybe you should go in Washington Park, and there was actually a scheme for that by David Ajay, the architect, to build some of it along King Drive and just south of 55th, where there would be some of the park used, and most of the balance of the development will go west of King Drive, on where there's like the crazy gas station and a lot of undeveloped land that the University of Chicago owns. I mean, they were trumping for this, they were pushing for this, and the city owns where the L stop is. That will be used, and then ultimately it makes its way there.
And you're talking about Jackson Park, right?
Jackson Park, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
There were advocates who sued to prevent the library from being built because it was in a historic park. But I think that, and these were largely Hyde Parkers, and we're all adults here, and largely people who are white Hyde Park liberals who didn't want this historic park to be altered so dramatically. But there are people in the surrounding neighborhoods, Woodlawn, South Shore, who've been waiting eons for something transformative to happen in the neighborhood, and here it is.
They announced in May 2015 it's coming to the South Side. The pull between Washington Park and Jackson Park kind of goes on for about a year, and then they announce it's going to Jackson Park. Why did it take 6 years for construction to start?
The biggest thing was the lawsuits tied things up. Also, there's a federal review that happens whenever a federally recognized historic building landscape is being altered. Had they picked 20 acres of vacant lots that weren't a park, it would have been done already. But these reviews take a long time. So that, plus the lawsuit slowing things up, contributed to the length of the delay.
What were the results of all those legal challenges? Were they simply dismissed, or were concessions ever made? And, their ultimate fear about the change of the park, do you think in this construction to this point, those were ever realized?
Oh yeah, I mean it's a major change. It's a major change to the park. I mean, I can't think of another park site in Chicago that has experienced a change that dramatic. So it's huge. Not many concessions. I think that I think they were largely losing. They largely lost what they were seeking, which was to halt the construction of the center. That didn't
Yeah.
happen.
They really wanted it moved to Washington Park. That was their big thing.
Or Washington Park or any other location. That would fit, but fit. But it's hard to find 20-acre. I'm not defending what got built, but it's hard to find 20 acres that along in Chicago, free acres that aren't along in a parkland, that aren't along the lake, and wouldn't cause displacement of people, like tearing down the very houses they're living in order to build.
As you've pointed out, across the 10 years, as community members have both been waiting for this center to open, hopeful that it will live up to these lofty expectations to bring in visitors and permanent jobs and, spark development in corridors from Woodline to South Shore. There have also been community members kind of fighting tooth and nail to secure protections like the Woodline Housing Ordinance, which passed back in September 2020, the Jackson Park Housing Ordinance pilot, which which was passed earlier this year. Like, you kind of talk about the Obama Center's legacy to this point of also being one of, I don't want to be too leading, but also one of contention, because it feels like as much as there have been the legal challenges to move it back to Washington Park and the way that stalled construction, there has also been this effort amongst community members to say, hey, don't leave us out in this process. We are okay with this being transformative, as long as that doesn't mean we're kind of kicked to the curb in all of this.
And that's absolutely critical, particularly in a city like Chicago, which, going back to the construction of University of Illinois Chicago and other big projects, it tends to uproot the people who are already there. The people who need the benefit of this thing being built often are the first ones to leave, and or to be forced out, and I think that also it plays their desire, their proper desire to want these protections, plays into long held feelings among particularly we Southsiders, which is, we're sitting on a part of the city that has a lake, 3 or 4 universities, boulevards, that although it's been pitched to us, and I'm 60 now, for a lot of these years as, oh, you just live in a ghetto, right? But those of us who live here know that it isn't. It's really a diamond, right? And that just as other areas of the city over the years, you look at for instance, what Lincoln Park looked like when I was a child, uh, and what it looks like now, you would never think you're in the same area. It goes from one of the poorer neighborhoods of the North Side to the richest in the city. That when the switch comes on, often the people who are living there get run out. So to want these protections, and frankly, if I could be a critic for a second here, they should have had an easier, given this president and what this presidency, particularly the election of this president meant. They should have had an easier time getting what they wanted, but they got some, and that's good at least.
As we've kind of talked through in the Woodline Housing Preservation Ordinance, there was a requirement for redevelopment of 52 vacant city-owned lots, and a portion of that had to be for, very low income households. There was supposed to be at least $1 million put into rehabilitating vacant buildings, helping people with property tax relief. And again, that took years for people to get into effect. And the Jackson Park housing pilot took even longer, as that just went into effect earlier this year. And ultimately, while it was watered down and residents weren't able to win things like a office of tenant protections or get some rent caps or rent freezes, they were able to also get some vacant owned lots set aside for redevelopment and to get some abandoned residential buildings refitted into for sale homes. Aesthetically speaking, how do you think this presidential center in this campus is going to compare to the other, 14 or so that are located across the country?
It's like all beauty being in the eye of the beholder, right? I mean, I think if you, I think if there's anything, and again, I'm trying to measure my words because I haven't given a full critique, and I won't be giving a full critique until it's open.
I mean, you give me like a preview,
I know I'm trying, man.
a little
I'm trying.
tease.
I'm trying. I think that if the idea of a tower and a particularly one that large is objectionable to a person, then maybe the aesthetics are of it are off compared to many of the others like the gold standard, which is the Lyndon Johnson Library, which I've seen, which is on a big campus on the University of Texas at Austin. The Clinton Library kind of fits. It's kind of it's lower in scale and it fits into the area where it is. I think that man, you got me up a tree trying to figure this one out, man. I think that being able to see the inside of the building once it opens will help the outside of the building make more sense to some people.
What does that mean exactly? Is it the granite? Is it the lack of windows? Like what parts?
Right. That you could that the lack of windows, the kind of oddly beveled shapes that are kind of mysterious to look at on the outside of the building. Why does the building tuck in there? Why does it pop out here? Once you see the full building, one can make the argument that it might make more sense. But then there's this overall question, which is, does it have to be a tower at all? Billy Chen, the architect who designed the building, she walked with me when I toured the site. She said the tower underscored the idea of ascendancy, Barack Obama's ascendancy, and that's an interesting concept. But do we need to see? I mean, architecturally, do we need that? I mean, the buildings that are nestled within the landscape, I think, are going to be very interesting, and the plazas that they open up to. So, then why do you build a large windowless building? It seems to be at odds with itself. You say, why does that building have no windows? Well, because there's exhibition space on the inside, so you don't want natural light shining in. And then it's like, well, okay, well, if you want space with no light shining in it, why would you build a tower? I mean, they seem to battle against each other, and I'm not sure that the opening of the building will reconcile all of that.
Given that it's already been 11 years, right? Rising costs, right? The excitement is there for a lot of people. There are definitely some skeptics out there. What do you think the legacy of this center will be in a decade or so? Do you think it can live up to its lofty expectations?
It depends on the programming. That's really where the rubber meets the road. What can you do? What as a Chicagoan, what can I do when I go there? I can romp around in the park. Are there events there? There's the athletic facility, home court that's to the south. Will I be able to go in there? And the idea that much of the museum, particularly that sky room that I talked about in the museum tower, will be free for people to get into. That's huge. The only things I can think of is maybe Lakeside Center at McCormick Place, right? Built in 1971 or rebuilt 1971, occupies this huge piece of parkland, right? I think it too is something like 20 acres or more of parkland. And it was, people were like, this is an outrage. But then on the other hand, years go by and, my sister graduated from there at the Erie Crown Theater. I went to see the Whispers in 1989. All of a sudden the uses of the building all begin to mitigate the controversy behind the way it looks and where it is. And that could happen here.
Beyond the museum and the park space, do you have a sense of programming? I know there's auditoriums and study rooms and a library. Is it, like it's been promised to be a place for cultural organizers, in public, informal and formal gatherings. Like, are these just like vague terms and we all just got to kind of wait and see?
Yeah, well, yeah, until it's actually programmed, that's exactly what has to happen. Typically presidential centers kind of have these three parts, right? I mean, there's the museum part where it's like, oh, look, here's the dress that the first lady wore. Here's the and other museums. Here's the presidential limousine. There's the kind of the hey Martha, look at this kind of portion. But then there's the institute portion, which is where the auditorium and the forums are. This is where you bring in leaders from around the world and maybe around the city to kind of discuss the weighty issues of the day. And then there's the research portion that this library will have, not documents, as we all know. Other libraries, you can see the historic documents. Let me see the paper that Lyndon Johnson wrote on the night JFK was assassinated. Those things won't be physically there. They'll be accessed by computers.
It's the first fully digital presidential set of papers, right?
Exactly. It'll be digital. So it doesn't look like it'll be this walled off institutional thing. They want people to use the building. So then it becomes how well it's programmed. That becomes the thing.
Who's responsible for that? Given this is a little bit different than maybe a traditional presidential center, do you have a sense of how it'll work differently? Is it Chicago Parks? Is it the public library who controls the programming? Is it a coalition of groups? Like who kind of leads those efforts?
Well, it'll be the Obama Foundation. So they're building it. So it'll be they. I don't know if they're bringing others in. I mean, if they haven't, they'd be smart to bring in local leaders to help program and figure that out. The parkland is the parkland, and will be used as parks are. And then the library, the public library that goes in there, it'll also have its own thing going on. But I'm assuming, and again, this is just an assumption on my part, that it's got to be more than just the foundation calling the shots. It has to be. They could be the umbrella, for it all, but there has to be some kind of community and civic involvement of Chicagoans to help figure out what will people see and do and experience when they go through some of these spaces. I mean, the museum space is theirs, right? I mean, however they want to program it, they have to program it. But I think some of the open spaces that we're yielding to build this thing, there has to be a sense from the community, their hand being in what we see there.
Sun-Times architecture critic and author Lee Bay, we appreciate you making time for CityCast Chicago.
My pleasure as always.
Before we get out of here, again, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who has signed up to become a CityCast Chicago neighbor. I am excited for all of the events we got planned for 2026 as we are celebrating 5 years, half a decade of bringing this podcast and newsletter to you every single day. We are pretty soon about to cross the 1,200 episode mark. And the truth is, we just, in many ways, getting started. We're just figuring out bigger, better, more efficient ways to connect with our neighbors, to throw cooler events, to make sure that things happening in and around the city that we're dropping in your inbox every week, that they're relevant to you, that they help you connect with more Chicagoans, your neighbors, help you get out here and volunteer a little bit more, right? Help you laugh a little bit more, help you introduce yourself, your friends, and your family to parts of the city you ain't never been to, whether you've been living here for a couple of months or you've been here your entire life. That's our goal, not only with the podcast and the newsletter, but also with our Neighbors program to give even more than we're already doing. And if you head over to membership.citycast.fm, you can tap in. Of course, every single episode of CityCast Chicago, as far back as I can remember, always ends with some good news. I want to show some love to the public library, which has some great events going on this week, including a teen film photography workshop at the West Pullman branch on Wednesday. All of the regional libraries have open shop this week where folks can use their sewing machines, 3D printers, and more. And of course, holiday movies are in full swing, playing across the city from Austin to Rogers Park, Jefferson Park to Jeffrey Manor, and so many other Chicago neighborhoods. I'm going to drop a link in the show notes. Tap in with their events calendar. They have hundreds, literally hundreds of events happening every single week from ages little baby all the way up to our elders in, I think, one of the best ways to invest, grow, and advocate for the public library system is to use it, is to be there. And so, yeah, check the link in the show notes. We are going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.